G'day, Nina. How are you?
Good, thanks, Andrew. How are you?
You're better than me.
Yeah, I think everyone can hear how you're feeling.
I'm just recovering from allergy. I'm not infecting Nina, I promise.
I think that's a lie.
She's a very brave woman. All right. Well, look, today we're doing a lot about
Unions.
and I guess we've left it alone for a while because our day-to-day work is around how we manage people. But these constant issues of how do you manage unions are starting to permeate back through our workplaces, particularly around rights of entry.
Yeah, they're creeping up a lot.
And particularly around the roles of HSRs, health and safety representatives, what they can do, what they can't do. So look, we've chosen a group of cases. It's not the most exotic set of cases today. And you won't be surprised that the answers are pretty straightforward, but they're easily forgotten, I guess. So look, let's just jump off with the first case, which is a protected action ballot. When Nielsen's case came through a few years ago, there was a feeling that 10 days was the period for electronic ballot that you had to do, that case sort of set the limit. That was not what the case said, but it seems to be something that everyone's been relying on. And this is a case by Deputy President Hampton, who's probably one of
quite reasonable.
Yeah, one of our best people in the Fair Commission. I think that's.
I feel like he's quite fair to both sides.
Yeah, and what he ended up was saying, well, 5 days plus the 3 days period of notice is adequate. That's really what all the case says, but the most important part of it is what the Deputy President is saying is you go to each case based on the number of people. So having 20 days when you only employ 7 people is absolute nonsense. Okay?
Yeah.
Having 20 days when no one's on leave and it's only day shift is nonsense. It might only be 3 or 4 days because everyone will be there during that period of time. So it is a question of reasonableness. Nielsen, the case, doesn't set a rule. It goes, look at the makeup of the people and the nature of the rosters and then determine what is right. So I know it's a dumb case, but I just thought we'd run it because it really does. Good reminder. We get a bit more exciting after that. We get into the CFMEU. So let's jump to the next case, which is set. Oh, I think
they're all CFMEU.
They're all CFMEU, they are, aren't they? So this is a union official
who's done a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, came on site one day, acted like it.
No, multiple occasions.
Well, the last time he came on site, he refused to be inducted. Went out. He was there on safety issues. Didn't do anything on safety.
Yeah.
Told people to pack up their tools and go. Incredibly provocative and destructive stuff. So when you challenge a union official's behaviour, it goes into 2 different jurisdictions. For penalty, it goes to the federal court, and for applications around suspension of their permit, you end up in the Fair Work Commission. The CFMEU end up with a $250,000 fine.
And he was fined $4,000.
Yeah, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're only earning $100,000 a year, $4,000 you've got a fine. It's not easy, even though the union will pay.
I'm sure the union paid for it.
The union paid up. I'm sure they celebrate his behaviour. Went back to the Fair Work Commission, and what the Deputy President said there was, look, this is moderate to severe behaviour. This is getting people to get up and leave. This is refusing to follow sensible directions.
Sensible safety directions,
And you're there on safety. So suspend him for 3 months. Now, he's the only organiser in the Newcastle district. It is a significant...
Wollongong district,
sorry. So it does have an impact. But why Nina and I put this case on is if you have a process for all people, that when they come onto site, they are inducted into safety. If they are a contractor, they're supervised to their place of work. If you have something that applies across the board, it is reasonable based on safety and risk, then you can ask the union organiser to do the same.
But it has to be uniformly applied. Like if you've got one rule for the unions and one rule for everyone else, that's when this all unravels.
Yeah. And it does unravel, and it empowers the union when you get it wrong.
Yeah, which I think we spoke about last week.
Yes, and so if we turn the page to the next case, more or less, so we'll go on to the next one. This is a case where JW Land is prosecuted and is probably going to end up paying penalties. And what they did is, again, union officials spoke to the official officer. I love that name. They talked about a variety of safety issues day one.
Yeah, so they notified them and had a meeting about all of the issues.
And then one of the union officials came back to tidy up loose ends the following day.
Which they knew as well.
Which they knew. And then they left the union official
for hours. They didn't let them do anything
waiting until
an electrical inspector came, which was not required.
Which was not required. And then they sought to frustrate the process. And the court just said, look, This is just so dumb.
Yeah, but they tried to actually claim that it wasn't frustration because without the electrical inspector, the union just wouldn't have enough information to look into the contraventions. And the court just absolutely crushed that argument because it was complete legal hair splitting.
Yeah, and I think, remember, this is a robust practice that you have with the union. This isn't a technical practice. I guess they're not always going to stick to what the rules are. So you can be robust with them. What you can't be is stupid. And so being stupid is deliberately frustrating their process with an artificial argument about how it will improve the outcome for them. The union's there. They want to deal with it. They're like any other service provider. They've turned up on a site. They've got other people they have to go to afterwards. I don't like waiting for doctors who think it's part of their job to keep you waiting. When you come to our firm, you don't wait. But anyway, nonetheless, doctors feel that's okay. Union officials don't. Okay, and you keep waiting for 3 hours, and then you seek to frustrate their examination of facts they're entitled to do. They're going to fight you. So, easy answer here. We saw case 1, which was get them to do the things in a reasonable manner, and we see now case 2, which is seek to frustrate them. The dumbest thing about this is, in case 1, you win against the union, you're empowered by it, and the union are more cautious in the way they behave. Case 2, union wins, they're emboldened, and they then drive you crazy.
Yeah, and they'll increase their behaviour.
So I couldn't see the upside in this one. All right, we're moving along though. We are trotting along at a reasonable pace because these are little cases. This is the AMW and Laminex, the Ballarat plant of Laminex. This is where rather than signing in or checking in, there was a biometric method of looking at you so that you'd look at you, said you're at work. Yeah. They picked my nose, they go, it's a Douglas nose, you're at work. Union said...
So they're in the process of installing this,
yeah,
and the union brought a dispute resolution claim.
Yeah. Now, can I just say, this is Laminex getting caught with their pants down, and what they did to try and get out of it has now endangered the whole process. If we just step back between 3 to 5 years, it was really common practice for the unions to challenge GPS on vehicles, okay? And we ran arguments, and not just me, but a whole lot of people. It was a safety issue around tiredness, it was around driving skills. This wasn't about seeking to discipline someone, but obviously if they breach rules in a fundamental way, it could be evidence of it.
Yep.
And the union lost every single case. Now, biometric scanning of people doesn't have the same safety feature. So it's sort of odd to do it. It's like a dumb thing to do, but nonetheless, there's arguments. For instance, you lose cards. I don't know what the arguments are, but they're not very good arguments. But nonetheless, had they consulted in this process, the union would have said no, a definite decision would have been made, and it would have gone in, and there's almost nothing they could have done about it. But instead of this, Laminex tried to do it by stealth. The union brought seeking interim orders, and to get out of the interim order, which is like an injunction, they said, oh, we're not going to force anyone to do it.
Yeah, so people can opt out.
So there you go. Now Laminex are caught with 2 different methods of clocking people in and out because they didn't do the sensible thing of consultation in the first place. And the answer is, yes, it would have been fraught with the union about doing this. And actually, I can sort of understand why collecting people's sensitive data is a concern for employees. But done correctly, they would have made a definite decision. That their only obligation after that was to mitigate the impact upon people by having appropriate privacy controls.
Yeah, but they didn't do any of that.
They didn't do any of that stuff. And so now they're caught with a dual system, which means when it comes to final orders, I think it's likely they're in trouble around consultation. So
which will unravel everything.
Which will unravel anything. We bring these cases not because we wish to highlight the sort of behaviour of dumb things that occur all the time, but why be scared of a union? They're not your employees. There's somebody who comes in and represents employees. You're the leader. Isn't it up to you to actually bring people across the line, not to hate the union because they actually represent people against you? The choice really is you step up and be a good leader. In the Laminex one, there was probably a very good argument around this that ought to have been run without the union for some period of time with supervisors and managers on the floor, so it went seamlessly. Whatever happened, that didn't happen. The consultation process is flawed. They're now stuck with a dual system, all because they're angry at a union. Unions are unions. They're just people who represent them. They become irrelevant by good leadership.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough of my raving and tell I'm unwell because I'm getting on to my favourite themes.
Your rants.
My rants, thank you very much. Okay, now.
This one was, like, I think quite an interesting one. So this is when during COVID times, one of the HSRs at Qantas refused to have the workers cleaning any planes from China because the Australian government had just ordered the closing of the borders.
Yep.
And instead of consulting with HSR, Qantas stood him down immediately and threatened disciplinary action and also to terminate his employment. And so Safe Work actually brought a claim against Qantas that they were discriminating against him on the basis that he was carrying out his actions as a HSR.
Now, can I just say, as an HSR, in depending which jurisdiction you're in, there are powers to actually direct the cessation of work, but it must be either in urgent circumstances or following appropriate consultation.
Which he didn't do.
Which he didn't do. But there's a fairly compelling argument to suggest that what he was trying to do was protect people, given the government's statement on it.
And also the fact is, although Qantas ran that argument, it was clear that their actions weren't because he didn't consult. Even if he did, they were going to do it anyway. So it was an irrelevant argument anyway.
Yeah, because I think we forget that HSRs have a number of obligations which they're entitled and allowed to carry out. It gets really quite difficult at times when they're leaving their workstation to go and consult, and you wonder, is this really relevant? But where HSRs take action in relation to a job they clearly have around safety, even if they do it in a flawed manner, the appropriate process is to consult. It's not to discipline. Because you're at that stage, you are treating them differently as a result of a decision they've made. So you are prima facie in the discrimination territory under the safety law. Here, all Qantas had to say to him is, look, you're not allowed to do that. Let's talk about how we're going to manage this. Let's talk about appropriate PPE. There was a whole range of discussions.
Yeah, they could have just applied the hierarchy of controls.
But at this stage, we had a leader in Qantas who liked confronting people, and this is just incredible confrontation. At a time of real vulnerability within Qantas, this was a bad and dumb decision, and now it's come back to bite them. Now, Qantas are not going to be terribly fussed by the maximum $500,000 fine, I think.
But they also had to pay $21,000 to the HSR, which is like the first kind of compensation order.
Yeah, I just think it's
for the discriminatory conduct.
Yeah, I think we just got to sort of wrap our arms around HSRs a little bit, give them some skills, give them some competency, and be close to them. Actually, pushing them out and fighting with them is a bad thing to do. They're people who, again, just because they're probably aligned with a union doesn't mean they're bad people. They're actually your employees. So
yeah, and I feel like if there was better education around what they can and can't do, you wouldn't be having a lot of these fights.
No. And if you were close to them and they said, look, I'm really unhappy about this, they wouldn't have given the direction to cease.
Yeah, they would have consulted with you on it.
But they feel like the enemy, they're going to take action which they're not entitled to take, but which doesn't entitle you to actually then take action against them. So I think probably the most interesting case today, because it highlights our area of risk that we have around HSRs and the opportunity that we have around them as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our big case for the day.
Main topic.
Yeah, in Whakaari.
Which is the New Zealand case.
Yeah. Now, look, we chose this New Zealand case after sort of some chatting because, I mean, this is a terrible case. 22 people killed, 25 people seriously injured, volcanic eruption
really awful.
on an island that erupted in 2016 without death. And
earlier than that.
1904,
with
I think it was.
A lot
as
of
well.
deaths, yeah.
Yeah, but the issue is this. It was an inherently hazardous site.
Yeah. It was an active volcano, and it's always been an active volcano.
And you might think, well, this is a real once in a lifetime sort of case. Well, let me just give you a couple of other examples which are just the same. What about outward bound taking kids from schools to the beach, where there are waves and undertows that could take kids and drown them? Exceptionally hazardous place. What is the information that you should have as far as a risk assessment, and what are the controls that you should have in place? Entering a new building site, which was a pre-1970 site in around the Melbourne docks, is going to be filled with asbestos. What is it's an extraordinarily hazardous site. It's just not obvious. It doesn't go boom, but the risks are boom. and
Yeah.
they can kill lots of people. So we talked about this because they end up getting about $2 or $3 million of fine, about $10 million of reparations, New Zealand dollars, against various entities. But what happened here is the principal contractor required risk assessments to be undertaken by the subcontractors. They didn't really have one of their own.
Yeah, they had none.
None of them were informed by volcanologists. They were informed by various data they collected, but not done well. So here we go. I'm going to go onto a site around the docks in Melbourne, pre-1970s built. I'm starting to excavate. What would be the first thing I would do before I knock down or do something? I'd get a hygienist in.
Yeah.
I would actually
do an audit.
do an audit. I'd do that because EPA would kill me if I didn't, but because I recognise there is an inherent hazardous basis of the place that I'm entering. When I'm taking children outward bound and I'm sticking them near the surf, what am I going to do? Well, I'd certainly check what the surf is going to be like, but I wouldn't be allowing children, young children, to be going into the surf without full supervision
and proper controls.
None of that happened here.
Yeah. So not only did they not have risk assessments, they didn't even use them properly. Like what you said about checking the weather that day, there were warnings about it being dangerous that day, and no one adhered to it at all.
Yeah, and it is that sort of blindness that goes with risk, is that you become, we deal in agriculture, so farm risk is an ongoing issue for us, in the sense that people who grow up on farms, and they're not complacent, they're just desensitized to the nature of serious risk that exists. And so they do things like drive tractors on steep falls, they lift things up, they carry things. They do all sorts of things that in any factory you would not be allowed to do.
Yeah.
But they do it, and they do it because they're desensitized to the risk.
Yeah, because they've done it thousands of times and nothing's ever happened.
And Whakaari is a desensitisation issue. It is, look, it'll probably blow one day, but not today. And unfortunately, it did blow today, and it killed lots of people. And the lesson for all of us is, if you have an inherently hazardous site or an inherently hazardous activity, then the risk assessment must be formed by the relevant experts around that and must have appropriate controls in place. And it must be managed and monitored. There must be a system that has integrity around it. Yeah. If not, everyone in that organisation, right up to the officers, are going to be liable. And that's what Whakaari is about.
And I think what's really important is not just having it, but making sure it's regularly reviewed. Because I find with desensitisation, people just replicate the same risk assessments over and over again. And it could be 5 years down the track before someone looks at it again and says, oh, this has changed.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right. I'm a bit muted today with this illness, aren't I? I'm not my usual excitable self. I haven't sworn yet. Okay, well, let's go on.
Pretty close.
I'm close. Now, let's go on to our problem, which I put in 2 words, which I know Nina can't say.
Oh, God. This is actually bullying when it's repeated. Bigmore Secondary College's BSc beach campus sat on the edge of a tidal swamp and old limestone cliffs. The back oval had the dramatic backdrop of 120-metre high limestone cliff, the base of which was washed by incoming tides. The purpose of the beach campus was to allow children to embrace an outward-bound curriculum, work as teams, and engage in life skills. Beach Tough Pty Ltd, BT, had been engaged to undertake literal strip reloading, sand and pebbles placed at eroded base of the cliff, reinforced grid wrap and bolting techniques to stabilise and prevent rockfall on the cliff. BSE had engaged them after geotech reports said there was a high risk of cliff wall collapse and rock falls from the aged and eroded cliff face because of the spreading tidal swamp. BT employees were members of the AWU, the teachers were members of the IEU. Both the AWU and IEU arrived after giving 24 hours written notice of their intention to enter the site because of dangerous conditions on site. When they arrived, Bill Sanders, the head teacher, asked them to sign in and be inducted. He required them to be escorted around the site pursuant to the policy of the BSc. They refused. They went to walk past him and he asked, "What do you want to inspect?" They said the swamp and the cliffs. Bill became concerned as the areas were roped off. He said, "You must not enter those sites. They are high-risk sites." The officials ignored him, went to the cliffs, pushing past him. They poked about and soil loosened from above and shale came down, missing the officials. BT escorted them off-site and immediately lodged applications in the Fair Work Commission with BSC, seeking to ban the officials from site as some of the shells struck cars and narrowly missed employees. BT subsequently erected signs and temporary wire fence to prevent people from accessing the cliff area. Point Leo,
Ornithological.
what is that?
It's bird watchers.
Oh, had a license to enter BSC to study the mating habits of sooty oyster catchers. Is that a real bird?
It's a real bird.
Okay. I don't know why you know that. A rare coastal bird that mated in the cliffs. Did you Google all this? Oh my gosh. Oh wait, sorry. On 12th of January 24, 1 week after the union imbroglio, they arrived, pushed back the temporary fencing and clambered up the wire wrap on the base of the cliff to a large limestone crest where they set up a blind for photography. Prior to entering the site, they had provided Bill with a rough risk assessment. He had told them not to climb on the cliff, and honouring his instruction, they stayed at the base of the cliff. As the 4 men collected stones to complete the blind, one slipped and slid bottom first down the base of the cliff. Seconds later, there was a terrible shudder. What ensued was a 5-metre section of the entire cliff face detaching, collapsing and falling, killing all 4 men. Wow, that's very, very morbid.
It was morbid, yeah, I know. It was a good start, but it got dark, didn't it? I must have been starting to get sick at that stage. So did the union officials enter illegally, and if so, is there a risk their permit would be suspended? So no, they actually entered legally because they gave the notice, but failing to actually follow basic safety rules when they were coming about a safety issue puts them right in the middle of that case we spoke about earlier today. So they would be in the strife.
What's a breach of? Is it a breach of their right of entry then, if they're not complying with? Oh no,
No,
just
it's their
safety
permit,
obligations.
yeah. So it's their permit obligations require them to act in a lawful manner, and when you create safety obligations, and here there are clear safety risks that existed, they came to inspect them, then they ignored all the safety risks, particularly about going to the site. Then they poked around
and caused other people to be at risk.
Yeah, so I think they'd be
fined,
yeah.
and then their permit would be suspended.
Was the BSE demands reasonable when the union officials sought to enter the site? So that was Bill, and Bill said, look, I need you to sign in.
Yep, that's reasonable.
Fine. I need you to be escorted because parts of the site are quite risky, and you're not to go past the roped area because it's there to prevent it. I think they're all reasonable. Yeah. In fact, I think they're almost inadequate. So they're reasonable. You could have asked a great deal more given the hazardous nature of where they were.
But I think if he asked for it to just be escorted around the high risk outside, it's fine. Can he still ask for them to be escorted anywhere on the site, even if it's not a risky area?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so that's the clarification.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Were there any breaches of safety law, and if so, by who? What would be the likely prosecution? Can I just say there are so many breaches of safety that sit in this, but the school is the one that's at the highest risk.
Yeah.
They've already seen some rock falls.
They know it's high risk.
They originally had it roped off. They then put a mobile fence around, which doesn't
temporary control.
Yeah, which is a temporary control. And merely directing someone not to climb up the wall doesn't change the risk of falls. So I would have thought that
they endorsed them going past that temporary fence.
They did.
As well.
So I would have thought that the school, and particularly Bill in this case, we don't really know what Bill's role is, but Bill would certainly be a Section 25 breach, and it could be a reckless endangerment breach.
Think so.
It's not quite enough to get over the barrier for industrial manslaughter. So it's a breach, but you'd have to demonstrate that it's so negligent. I think it'd be difficult. Whereas it's not going to be hard to show he had a subjective knowledge of risk of injury.
And he was indifferent to it.
So I think that Bill's could be trotting off to jail with this one.
Yeah.
And so can the school.
I think the association as well.
Yeah. Except
they don't have to be employees, even if they were just like volunteers with it. The fact that they sent people off to do this stuff and it doesn't seem like there was a proper risk assessment, knowing the risk. I feel like there is a risk there too.
There's a small risk, I think. I don't think the regulator would be too excited about prosecuting and bird watching.
But it is a breach.
It is a breach.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
I think
that's it. That's all the questions for this week. We're going to have a quick one this week.
No. Now the workers' comp.
Okay, let's go. Okay. All pain, no gain. So look, we're on Wednesday, the 1st of May.
Mhm.
Kim will be presenting. I think I am too.
Yes.
Pretty interesting at the moment, where we're seeing the use of psychological hazards as being one of the major drivers behind workers' comp claim. I think, for Nina, you and I and Kim, what we're seeing is what the data suggests, that it is bad breaches of psychological hazards that are most often successful. So they are the bullying, sexual harassment type of ones. I'm sure we'll see a growth in the non-egregious ones, but at the moment, there's actually some very simple answers to fix the high level risk. And I think that's part of what we want to chat to you about. In the premium period, end of March. So we also want to talk to you about how do you manage this in Victoria statistical case estimates so that you do get a proper runoff as you're coming into January, February, March. And we'll talk more about how that actually works so that you can do your own calculation around it and understand it. And Kim will give you some pointers on where to go and what to do about it. And I'll do my usual stuff, which is talking about actually how to prevent claims. And last, there'll be inherent requirements discussions, particularly around mental health issues that Kim will talk about.
Which we're seeing pop up. I think that's probably the most common fitness for duty matters that we're seeing across
client
sites.
And it's the most complex. It's very hard.
Yeah.
So look, we're putting that together. We really look forward to seeing you. That'd be good.
Send an email to admin to RSVP. We've already had a few people.
Yeah, and can you give us a thumbs up, because I don't really want to be here. I'm feeling sick, so see you later.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.